Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have a great interview with a farmer. I hope some of our farmers are in the chat today so they can hear some rational thinking. But anyway, welcome aboard Melanie Keelan from Barcelona, Spain, Bridge MCP from Binghamton, New York, upstate New York. And we also have, of course, May Wood from Long Beach, California. We have in the house Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. We have AVQ, El Senor Michael Rudnin from Brooklyn, New York. We also have Eric Hayes from Atascocita, Kingwood. If anybody else is in the house, please go ahead and make yourself known so that we can salute you. We always like to make sure and salute our folks. Anyway, we're going to have a great show for you today. It's on. You know, Donald Trump still doesn't know that he's behind in the polls. Can you believe that? He still thinks that the polls are, well, you know, we're doing fine. We're still ahead by a bunch. And you know, on Twitter, they're actually showing some tweets with the big crowd that he has in Montana. And if you go ahead and do it per the square inch, you realize that it's a small area with a small crowd with the intent to make it seem like it's bigger than it is. The man is falling fast. The campaign is imploding fast. And, you know, I wrote a tweet earlier today because, you know, if you take a look at it's almost like the media, whenever things are going well for Trump, they're always ready to call it out right away. Things are going great for Trump. But whenever it has to do with reality now, they are a bit slower in mentioning what's actually happening, right? So, you know, I just kind of put out a tweet out there. I'm trying to see if I can find what I said. Maybe it's in replies. I don't know where did I put that tweet? Because I want to show it because you know what? I get tired often of how the media is covering stuff. I mean, we also take a look at how they're covering. Right now, the Israeli jails are going through a whole lot of stuff where they really, uh, I mean, they're doing what would definitely be called war crimes. Nobody talks about it. You don't hear anything about it, right? It is like nothing. It's like, oh, we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything. You know. Earlier today, somebody put out their, one of an economist. I don't remember his name right now. Let me go ahead. Maybe I can pull his name out from here. He said that maybe the reason Trump is getting the amount of coverage he's getting on TV, it's because it's good for it, and it's true. That is not conjecture. It is near fact. And let me put that up on the screen. It's near fact that remember former CBS CEO Moonves said the following about his network covering Donald Trump. It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS. Yes, he said that. Breach says Egberto Lawrence O'Donnell was on fire against the media last night. Did you see him? Of course, I even was about to make a tape of it. I mean, a blog of it. But instead, I'm doing that this weekend because I ran out of time. I had a interview this morning, when I intended to really do it, so I was not able to do it yet, but I will do it. I'm going to cut it up because it was like a 15 to 16-minute segment. And that's a long time, so I'm going to try to get the highlights out of it. But I love what Lawrence did. He got cuts of how the media treated both Biden as well as Jean Pierre, right? Because it shows how disrespectful they were, and when they didn't get the answer they were looking for, they were into their skin. And when they interview Trump and Trump gives an answer, it's like, oh, okay. Even though his answers are lies, and everybody know that the answers are lies. Okay, so it is amazing. Mike Cisak wants to hear about the farmer. He wants to hear about the farmer. Okay, Mike, I will give you your wish. I will give you your wish. In fact, that's how I intend to start the show. Anyway, folks, get ready to listen to a farmer who's been on the land for a long time. I hope he educates many of these farmers that are voting against their own interests. Let's go ahead and take it right here, and then we'll take it on the other side. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, I am extremely happy because we're going to touch a section of this country that is very misunderstood. We're going to touch a section of this country that many a times vote against their own interest, their own well-being. Look, Brian Reisinger grew up on a family farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin, and lives to tell the hidden stories of rural America. He is an award-winning writer, speaker, and consultant. Brian worked with his dad on the farm from the time he could walk. His book, Land Rich, Cash Poor, tells the story of the disappearing American farmer, weaving forgotten history with his own family, a four-generation fight for survival. Good. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get started, tell me a little bit about your history on the farm, where you grew up, etc. Because I want folks to understand that this isn't what we're going to talk about isn't something coming from the left coast or the right coast, but this is reality and something that we don't get a lot of in our mainstream media, how people really live, the tribulations that they're really going through.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking. I appreciate your focus on the issue. The reality is that I come from about as much a flyover country as you possibly could. You said it. I grew up working with my dad from the time I could walk, and it goes much deeper than that. We go back four generations. My great grandfather actually fled and escaped pre-World War I Europe to come to Wisconsin, to come to the rolling hillsides of farmland in Wisconsin, try to make a better life. And my grandpa grew up in the Great Depression. And that was a time when farms, although things were incredibly hard, farms were such a dynamic part of our industry that he was able to climb into the middle class despite growing up in the Great Depression. My mom and dad survived the farm crisis. And then I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s as farming went from being able to cut a middle class path through the depths of the Great Depression to barely making ends meet in modern America. I'm lucky. I grew up with a good, solid working middle class background, but it was slipping away for families and farms like ours all over the heartland. And so that's where I'm from. And that is kind of what informs my view on all of this stuff as I dove into these issues for the book and as I think about these things now.
Now, tell me, as you see it, what ails the farmer?
Yeah, the thing that ails a farmer right now is an extreme kind of on steroids version of what so many people are experiencing in this economy. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so important. Farmers for generation after generation have been facing higher costs that have been going up, even as the prices they get for their goods may be going down or volatile. There's structural reasons that that's happening in our economy that really don't have anything to do with one side of the aisle or the other in particular. These are deep-seated things that have been going on generation after generation. So now when we come into this, time period, and we have people in this economy who are trying to figure out where their place is in this economy, we can learn a lot from the disappearing American farmer, the forces that are driving that disappearance, the things that are making it harder for farms to make ends meet. They're similar to the kinds of things that make it hard for a lot of people to make ends meet, but it's so deeply seated, so wound into what's going on in our country. I think it's really informative. The other thing about it is it does impact every single American dinner table. We're talking about the food supply for every American, and so the hollowing out of rural America is something that everybody in every part of America should care about because it's impacting food prices. It's impacting the security of our supply chain during crises like COVID. It impacts all kinds of things that really have a huge impact on every American family. And the thing is, it's happening back here in Midwestern flyover country where a lot of people don't necessarily realize what's going on.
It's interesting because in with everything that you say, I, I I study quite a bit of economics, and economics affect the farmer just as much as it affects the average worker, etc. And I look at the aggregators, let's say the ADMs and all the other food aggregators out there, and if I go ahead and I look at the stock market, I'll see that these guys have ever increasing profits. They're paying ever increasing dividends. They're doing very, very well. Now, in a closed system where you have the farmer who sells to a cooperative, who then sells to the ADMs, etc. If everybody in that chain, uh, they're working under our economic system to increase profits, to increase all these other things. Somebody gets squeezed. Somebody's profit is money not earned by others. And the way I see it, and you explain to me if I'm wrong here, you are the genesis of the food supply. And if you are the genesis of the food supply, it behooves me an economic system that says the one who produces isn't the one who profits most from that product or that service. Explain.
Yeah, the reality is there's a very big disconnect between what farmers get for their goods, their products, and their crops, and what consumers pay, whether it's in the grocery store or at the restaurant. And we could have an economy where we have a much more, I'll call it economically diverse range of options, different places that farmers sell to, different places that people buy their food from that's much more diverse than it is right now. We really don't. What we have is a very large global kind of commodity based supply chain that gets the food from the farm gate to the dinner table, but does it through some very specific and limited channels. Now, some of that has happened through natural competition and things like that in the direction of the industry, but some of that has also happened just because things in the American economy, not just in agriculture, not just in food, but all across the entire American economy have become dominated by big, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so farmers, the small and medium sized farmers, but even some of the larger farmers, they're the little guy in that economic picture. And so the squeezing occurs on the farmer. And the problem with that, beyond if you care about farmers, which I think a lot of your listeners probably do, we should care about people who are going through hardship. But irregardless of that, when farms get squeezed and we go from having over 6 million farms a century ago to having lost 4 million of those farms today, that impacts things. The farms that we have are carrying an increasingly perilous burden, and the channels that our food goes through to get to the consumers is one that can at times be incredibly vulnerable during disaster. It's one that is slowing down innovation and can lead to higher prices. It's one that creates all kinds of problems for the consumer, as well as, to your exact point, squeezing the American farmer and creating this disappearance, or at least contributing to it, because there's a lot of factors, but it is a big one. You're right.
We've lied to ourselves quite often. We've said we believe in competition. We've said we believe in having as many people in one domain as possible. Yet at the same time, we create laws. And we have to remember one thing: the economy is not divine. The economy was created by human beings. The laws that govern the economy is not divine. Again, these are created by human beings. And the fact that you spoke about channels, how the channels have been restricted in the way you get from the farm to market. That all those things are processes created by man, created by corporations, etc. The farmer, in my opinion, and you explained to me, you're the one who wrote the book, Land Rich, Cash Poor. uh, the farmer has to find a way to take back control from the corporations. Again, we've seen all the profits in the corporations while the farmer gets squeezed. And at the same time, it seems like the farmers are selecting people who tend to believe in that process that squeezes them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that what farmers have been facing is all of those things combined with the successive instances of economic upheaval, the Great Depression, the
Hmm.
farm crisis of the 1980s, the impacts of globalization, some of which have been good, some of which have been bad, the recessions of the more recent years, all of that. When you combine that with what you're talking about, when you combine that with the societal forces of our economy shifting from rural to urban, when you combine that with the way that technology has changed and has begun to leave those small and medium sized and even some of the larger farmers behind in certain ways, which is something we can get into. You combine all of that, these compounding forces leave farmers in a nearly impossible situation. And the reality is that there is plenty of blame to go around, and that's the bad news. The good
Hmm.
news is that means there's plenty of things that people on both sides of the aisle can do about it. One of the things that I think that folks on the right have failed to do is recognize what's happening in competition in this country, to your point,
Hmm.
and that it's something that they believe in. I think many of them maybe in good faith, but it's something that has slipped away and policy wise has not necessarily carried through in a way that can protect not only farmers but small businesses, consumers of all kinds. There's things that I think the other side of the aisle has also done where the role of government has maybe been captured by folks who use it for things different than what it was intended for when we think about subsidies and things like that. And so that's why I think it's important to have honest conversations about both sides. But I think you're absolutely right. And I will say, I think that, people in the heartland, people in rural areas, they have a lot of reasons for voting the way they vote. One of the things that we do need to do is we need to see an entirely new reorientation by both political parties, and not just the parties, but all ends of the political spectrum around how are we going to create more opportunities for our farmers? Not just how are we going to support our farmers, because you do hear people on both sides of the aisle say, "Oh, I support the farmers," and they'll give lip service. They might even throw an initiative at a farmer now and then. There's certainly plenty of support in a general sense for farmers. They're a beloved people. They're wrapped up in our national identity. So I'm not going to say that nobody cares about the farmers, but I will say that I don't think our policy has been geared toward actually making a difference. And the question is not what do you think of the farmers? Because everyone will say, "Oh, we love farmers. We love the Super Bowl commercials. We love those stories telling us about farmers overcoming adversity in the Great Depression. We love that stuff. It makes us feel good as Americans." But we've been stamping farmers out systematically. And so if we ask ourselves the question, what are we doing to create new opportunities for farmers, new market opportunities, new places that farmers can sell more goods, and in turn, consumers and hardworking American families more places and ways they can get their food? That's what's going to help solve this. That's what's going to change a lot of these deep-seated policy problems.
I agree wholeheartedly. Now, let's talk a little bit about policy. You're a dairy farmer. You and your dad were dairy farmers. And just a question here. Your business was fairly profitable, but it's more difficult each each year. It gets more difficult with all the different rules, et cetera. You spoke earlier about technology and how technology affects the small farmer. Specifically, how does technology affect the small farmer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great question. A note on how my background informs it. You're absolutely right. My dad was a dairy farmer. He's third generation. I worked with him, and then I also entered the journalism and the public policy world. So I end up, for better or for worse, getting a unique view of this, having lived it and then having worked in that realm. My sister still works with my dad, and we now have a farm that doesn't milk cows anymore, but raises cows for other farms, raises beef for consumers, and raises a wide variety of cash crops. The reason we did that is exactly what you just said, which is that it was becoming harder and harder each year for a dairy farmer of our size to be able to make it. So we have made a change. We're in that transition. Where does technology fit into that? This is one of the great untold chapters of what's happened to the disappearing American farmer. People remember the farm crisis in the 1980s, and that
Hmm.
it was its own little depression just for rural communities. And what was going on around that same time was there had been a shift in technology in this country. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were people leaving rural areas for urban areas, and there was a need to figure out a way to make it so that farms could continue to operate with less labor because they had people leaving
Mhm.
because there were better paying jobs in the city. So one of the ways you could do that is you could have technology help farms get better scale, meaning take on more acres, take on more animals with fewer people breaking their backs to do it. Some of that was good because we were losing workforce to the urban areas and because farming's hard work. And man, modernizing it and help it be more efficient is a good thing in general. I think we can all agree on some amount of that. But what happened is it went so far. And by the time we got to the 70s and 80s, those farm wages and those factory wages kind of caught up. We didn't need to have technology making it possible for farms to get bigger and bigger anymore. That had worked out and it was just fine. The technology was now leaving behind those medium and small size farms. What we needed was what's called scale neutral technology. That means that it's affordable enough and practical enough for farms of all sizes. So instead of the big implements being pulled behind tractors that cover huge amounts of fields, bigger than a lot of farms have, and more expensive than a lot of farms can afford, we needed technology that was going to work for farms at all levels of that kind of chain. And we didn't have that. And by the time we got to the 70s and 80s, by the time we moved into the farm crisis, technology was leaving farms behind as well. So we got on the other side of that farm crisis. All that economic devastation came into the 90s. And the small and medium sized farms that remained, not only had they weathered that terrible storm of the farm crisis, they also didn't have the technology they needed to be able to continue to compete in this economy.
Now, so the reality is, we could have had policy that mitigated that. We could have had policies that gave certain advantages for small forms. Let me say something. We always talk about security. We always talk about the national security, and we tend to look at that from a militaristic point of view, not realizing that having a diverse bunch of folks who farm. Let me give an example. Suppose we created one large farm, it would always be more efficient to have one huge farm, one manager, and everything works fine. But you shoot that manager, or that manager gets sick, or something happened, you no longer have diversity. With the lack of diversity, you kill the crop. That's why we like to have diversity in crops, diversity in all these things to ensure the sustainability over time. Now, as it turns out, there is a downside. There's an upside to having huge farms. I mean, there's an upside to having huge farms. Theoretically, prices could fall because there's less labor, efficiency of scales, etc. The price you pay are two, right? One in which we can hurt ourselves if there is a major problem. We found that with the milk industry, right, with the Similac, when the baby food industry, by concentrating that into one area, when one plant went down, it was a national issue. Same thing with farming. We could have that problem. Now the issue is here that we lose our security by not having a whole bunch of small and medium sized farms throughout our nation. And only policy can control that, because efficiency efficiency is not the only thing we should be searching for. We should be searching for sustainability as well. And one of the problems with this efficiency is that efficiency didn't go to pay farmers for having brought us to that point. It went into the pockets of the few who controlled capital.
And here's what's happening. We have had basically the holy grail of food and agriculture policy in this country has been about cheap food.
Mm-hmm.
And cheap food is to your point, is a worthy goal. The reality is that food becoming a smaller share of household budgets is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things about our system that have been a modern miracle in that regard. But when cheap food is the only thing you're going after, you lose having an economy that has a way that can be lasting and can be durable, to your
Right.
point, being sustainable. And so we needed to have something a little bit different. We need to gear our government policy around what's going to create opportunities for those farmers, because if you create opportunity for those farmers to continue to thrive in a wide variety of businesses of all sizes, both the farms and in the general agriculture and food sectors to be able to thrive. You have more choices for people. You have more durability. You have all the things that you're talking about that we're lacking. And it's because our holy grail was only cheap food, which again is a good goal, but it's part of, it should just be part of it. It shouldn't be the only holy grail. So what we ended up having happen is, yes, the economy shifted more and more toward only efficiency, and efficiency is good and we need it. But shifting only toward efficiency means that we lost other things along the way. And that's a real problem, and it's a systemic issue. You talked about the Similac issue during COVID. We saw this. We had farmers desperately trying to find places to sell their food products and their prices going down, and we had consumers desperately looking for goods and their prices going up. How does that happen? Why can't the farmer and the consumer just walk across the street and help each other out? Because we have this large system that some of it is needed. We have to have a sophisticated supply chain to compete globally, to be able to supply different types of markets, but it doesn't have to come at the expense of also having local and regional economies that are robust. They give people options where you can go down the street to your grocery store, you can go to a specialty food store, you can stop off at a farmer's market, you can go to the local meat shop, you can do all the different things that you would do. You don't have to go 20 places to get your groceries. I'm not saying that, but you can have the ability to go a couple different places and to be able to have different access points for things. That's good for families. That's good for American competition and businesses of all kinds and all sizes. And that's good for the farms. But unfortunately, we have instead have this situation that has squeezed farms nearly out of existence and has created problems for everybody as a result.
We are wedded to one economic system, and we are wedded to one group of folks who decide what the economic system is going to look like. And I've always said this, even during every recession we've had, even through the depression, even through what we think is a growing economy, is that if you have a lot of people ready to do the work, you have a lot of products out there, and somehow you get unemployment and a shortage of product. The problem is not the people. The problem is not the lack of resources. The problem is a failed economic system. And I think until we're honest about that, we do, in fact, if farmers are suffering, if farmers are dwindling, if all these things are occurring, you cannot say you have a healthy economic system or economic system that works for people if people are suffering within that system. Let's say your dad, when you were growing up on the farm, let's say your dad got some sort of a very chronic illness that really stopped him from being able to run that farm. And to save his life, he had to have this $1 million surgery or whatever. Your entire farm would be on the, would be at risk. Yet, there are societies, and I always like to talk about our brothers and sisters in Norway or other places where all those things are mitigated. I had a guy who listens to my show in Norway, and he called and he said he's an American who moved to Norway because of those particular incidences. His son got paralyzed and over in Norway, and he was just amazed that a bad act or a illness or being hurt by your cotton gin or what, or a cow kicking you and making you sick or whatever didn't mean the end of the family farm or the end of your financial security. So I think I think having people like yourself out there writing books like this, telling people as it is. And look, I am a very political person, but if you notice, as I asked the question, I tried to make it non-political in the way because it's a thing that affects people. It affects people's lives, and what we're looking for is the solutions that one must find to make sure all are sustainable. Now, let me just say, Brian, I talk, I ask questions, etc. But you wrote the book. What would you have liked to say or tell us that my questioning was lacking in?
We've had great questions and it's been a really great discussion. I love being able to engage with people from all different viewpoints and all different places because that's what we're going to need to be able to do to solve this issue. And so I appreciate the dialogue. One of the things that was really interesting and rewarding for me was being able to take a lot of these big macroeconomic forces and societal forces and technological forces that I researched to figure out what had been going on and connect that with my family's experience. That was very personally rewarding for me. I also think it's, I hope, one of the things that will make the book compelling to people, that will make people want to pick up Land Rich Cash Poor and be glad they did, which is to say they will learn about these issues we've been talking about, but they'll also see what it's like for our family. And so, I'd like to talk for a moment just about what that's been like. I mentioned my great grandfather coming over here, escaping pre-World War I Europe. He worked under debt for decades to be able to establish our farm. And my grandfather grew up through the Great Depression to be able to get into the middle class. Even in the modern day, I was amazed at how these big forces combined with things that happen in our life. My grandpa, when he was a man and my dad was 8 years old, my grandpa fell off a corn crib and broke his back. And my dad stepped up at the tender age of 8. And he's been milking cows and farming ever since that time to help out. When my dad was a parent and was going through kind of middle age, and I was 14 years old, my dad ended up having the need to have a really important surgery because of some internal bleeding things he was having at 14. I stepped up. My dad was laid up for a month and a half. And you're right. These things, they put the farm at stake, and it really presses down on families like ours. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to do this and to live close to the land and to help feed the country. But also just the things that happen to a family when you're living close to the land and you're subject to the weather, the wind, the rain, the economic forces, the physical danger and the peril that can happen. It's really a rewarding thing to be able to tell those stories about what happened when people were in danger, when people overcame adversity, when people worked in ways they never thought that they could. And when we face all that wind and rain, and to be able to connect that with what's going on in the broader economy and try to reveal something to people from urban and rural America, like, that's been a really rewarding thing to be able to do.
Let me tell you, Brian, teachers and farmers are the two biggest heroes, in my opinion, when we think about it. They feed us and they move us forward. They move knowledge forward. The two most important jobs in this country, in the world. Yet I believe too often they're some of the least respected. They're always given accolades. They're always given accolades. It's great to give a farmer and a teacher accolades. But when it is time to invest in doing what's necessary to make sure each of these are healthy, we find teachers scraping and we find farmers doing the same. I hope with the advent of your book, with some of what you've spoken here and gone before, that people would start looking into real policies that make lives better for the farmer, the teacher, and all these people that are the heroes in our society. So, with that, Brian Reisinger, author of Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold Story of the Disappearing American Farmer, who we don't want disappeared, folks. Let's make sure to go out and get this book. Let's make sure and support our farming community. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Well, thank you for having me. It's available on Amazon and other places online now. It's going to be in bookstores August 20th. I hope that people do pick it up and help join the fight to help save our farms. I appreciate you raising the awareness of these issues, and have a great show.
And folks, you're going to see all the direct links to the book right in the associated blog post for this particular program. And this will be aired on air as well. Thank you so kindly, Brian.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that. But willful ignorance is a bad thing. CSAC says he still hadn't heard how this guy explains the problem. The farm issue is not difficult at all, right? We just have to look to the past Trump's agricultural secretary, who said the small farm. You know what? Let's go ahead and put that on the screen for you, because I want to get into that a little bit. I forgot what its name is. Trump agricultural secretary. And I want to point out that he said small farms are dead. All right. And they're not dead because they need to be dead. They're dead because of the policies that these guys support. So here it is. Trump's agricultural secretary warns family farms may not survive. Sonny Perdue. Uh, Here is the administration that many farmers like to vote for. And he is telling the people, the milk farmers and everybody else, that the small farm is likely dead. And the thing about it is, that's not true. You can create policies that support, and Mike Cisak says, well, he didn't give what the problem is. He sure as hell did. He talked about what technology did to the farm, and then I came back to him when he talked about technology and said, but if we stopped, look, capitalism says whatever the market will bear, and it also says that we maximize profits and for shareholders and executives, and by that definition, the family farm is dead. But if we went ahead and instituted policies that aren't governed by that, remember what he talked about cheap food, right? If our sole purpose is cheap food, then 100, then as efficient as we can get in any particular industry is what we'll shoot for. But said efficiency is wrong. Okay, Michael Cisak is calling. All right, Michael, come on in. What's up?
Okay. So,
Okay, hold on a second. Let me go ahead and get you on the right speaker system here. Bear with me 1 second. All right, go ahead, Michael.
okay. So I listened to him, and he was not specific. He beat around the bush, and I can understand why.
No,
Being
he
on
didn't
your
beat
side.
up. He did not beat around the
Yes,
bush.
yes,
And
he did.
no, he did not.
Listen,
But go ahead, make your
I
point. Make your point.
give me a minute. Give me a couple minutes here, okay? I'll try and be quick. The problem that we run into, okay, as far as farmers, is the regulatory restrictions that we have in the entire economy of agriculture. It stems from FDR and his administration, which really heavily restricted as far as what all that we could do, how we could do it, who we could sell to, how it goes through. I mean, it's a dictate from top to bottom. Okay, it's not a free economy. The only time that we can actually have a free economy is when we go to the farmers market and we do cash to cash with just, like fruits and vegetables and anything else that doesn't have to go through a required FDA check. Okay? So that's the problem that we run into. When you have to go through a shit ton, excuse my language, of steps in order to sell food, okay, you have to sell food in massive quantities in order to afford it. That is why there's been a huge consolidation of farming into larger and larger corporate farms. That's the reason. It has nothing to do with the way the economy runs or anything else. It has to do with the way that the government is running
Okay,
things.
now that you've said that, I can tell you how wrong you are, and let me explain why. Because you actually contradicted yourself when you pointed out something very important. If you as a farmer produce a whole lot of products, and for the most part, out of the regulatory state, you go to the farmers market, and you are from farm to person, which there are a lot of companies that are coming up right now doing exactly that. In other words, there are a lot of small farms that the way that they are making money right now is that they've gone into what's called boutique farming. And what they do is they have small farms that they have these different products, and some of them even have websites where the way you work with them is about 1,000. They have 1,000 customers that they grow for, and that 1,000 customer gets the products that they want. That is outside of the regulatory state. Now, under
It's
the
done well. No, 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 no. You're
Wait,
not going to get away with no lie
I am
like
not.
that.
Wait.
You
I am
still
not
have
done.
to go through the regulatory system.
I allowed you to speak. Let me finish. Okay, I allowed you to
Okay,
speak.
I'm just
There,
covering the
there are.
lies that you
You
keep
will
making.
wait. Hold on. You will do regulations for the safety of food. That is a requirement. That is a must. That is to protect you and me, whether you like it or not. I don't believe in the laissez-faire where it says, well, if I grow plant in salmonella infested fields, that somehow we will, I will be out of business after I kill a few people. They sue me and I'm out of business. That's not humane. That is evil. But let's go ahead and do it the right way. There
You think
must be some.
farmers are wanting to kill people?
That's not what I said at
Really?
all.
Are
Again,
you really pushing that?
no, no. Wait a minute.
Are you really doing that?
Michael.
I mean,
Again,
that's your
no,
mentality. I'm
Michael,
sorry, but that
Michael,
is your mentality.
Michael. You
That's why
just
you push so many regulations.
Michael, you just lied on what you just said there.
That's your
I said,
mentality.
no, I said, we will not
Yes,
allow.
we must dictate,
So
right?
we
Right, that's what you just said. We
Michael,
must dictate.
Michael, why don't you be quiet? One of the reasons you can't, because you lose an argument, you have to interrupt. All right, here's the issue.
Everyone look up Miller's Organic Farm in Pennsylvania.
Okay, look,
Okay?
I've done all of that. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Okay, we have to protect everybody from anybody that's going to do harm. That is whether they are a farmer, whether they sell whatever. The government, we the people, is there to ensure that we don't have individuals. I'm not saying all or
You
most or
don't
whatever, but we protect against that. Period. We
you
must
do
have
not do that
regulations.
through regulation.
Yes, you do that through regulation. It's the only way you
No.
can do that. What's the other way
No,
to
it's
do it,
not the only
Michael?
way you can do
What's the
that.
other way, Michael? Please
You
tell me.
do it through the courts.
Again,
Oh my gosh.
wrong.
You
The
really don't
courts
understand, do you?
assume that you're dead first, right? Because the only way you know you have to do it through the courts is that it's after the event. Regulations are before the event. Courts are after the event. So therefore, if you want the courts to handle it, you have put a price on life.
No.
Now
The
let me
thing is
finish.
that even with
But wait, let me
regulations,
finish.
people
But
still
Mike,
die.
let me finish, Mr. Mike. Let me
Even
finish the
with
statement.
regulations.
Mike, let me finish the statement that I'm trying to make. The portion of the farming that goes into the corporate state now is something that's pushed by neoliberals and Republicans alike. And the reason Perdue came out there and said that the family farm will not survive is that was unwilling to take the positions that progressive support to ensure that the family farmer will remain. And how does the family farmer remain? We make sure the family farmer has health care. We make sure that the family farmer can produce whatever he wants to produce. And also, we make sure that we don't get monopolies where the farmer has to aggregate his corn, he has to aggregate his wheat, he has to do all these other things. We want to get rid of that to ensure the family farm's survival. I suggest you go ahead and get this young man's book. He's not a partisan person. He's a person that wants to actually get a solution. The problem is we have too many
No, he doesn't.
people that are voting against their own interests. Michael, let's say something real quick so I can continue with my program.
So, okay, so you keep talking about monopolies and all. There are already monopolies.
Make the point.
In the there are monopolies because of government regulation.
No, yes, you're right.
everything
Because of neoliberal regulations, you're absolutely right.
Because of leftist policies. Yes,
No,
thank you very much.
neoliberal policies. There's a difference.
It's
Neoliberal
the farmer
policies.
bill.
Sir,
You know why there are some why the farms keep getting larger and larger?
yes, I do
Do
know
you
why
really
they
want to
keep
know?
getting larger. Because of neoliberal
Because-
policies.
No, because the subsidies that the left keeps pushing, subsidies that go into the farming bill, the welfare that you keep talking about that we shouldn't give to the corporations, goes to the corporate farms. Okay.
Yes, you're
Does
right.
Not, okay?
You're absolutely right.
And it pays to be a huge ass corporate farm, a huge ass corporate farm more than a small family farm that you really don't
Okay, I
get
want you
hardly
to
any.
stop right there. I want you to stop there because you know the problem
Okay,
is this.
and
Hold on.
that's the subsidies
Michael, you got to
that you
stop
keep
when I
railing
Michael,
against.
when I ask you to stop, stop please, okay? When I ask you to stop, please stop.
Well, you keep interrupting me, so
Michael, it's my
it's fair,
show.
fair.
It's my show. When I ask you to stop, please stop. And here's the answer to that question. I stop you when you've completed a sentence, not when you're bloviating. I stop you when you complete a thought. And your thought is this.
I'm
The
not
thought was,
I'm not
be
bloviating.
quiet for a change.
I'm
That's
making a point.
the thought
I'm
you
making
made
a
your point.
truth.
You made the point. You said the subsidies that the government gives mostly goes to major corporations. You are correct. That's what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you you are correct, but you are wrong in the reasons or who's responsible for it going to major corporations. I want these subsidies to go, as we talked about with the brother Brian on the program here, to go to farmers like you. But you see, you have been so trastornado in your mindset that you do not allow critical thinking to get into your head. Now, here's the issue with getting the money to you, my brother. The conglomerates should get zilch. Remember, we spoke about technology. We should have a balanced approach, or I should say, a what's known as a weighted approach towards the small farmer. Why? Because in a capitalist system, you will always get an aggregation to those who have more capital. However, if we understand that not having a whole lot of Mike Cisak doing farming out there is a security risk for the country, and we don't have the policies that necessitate that, then that's where it goes wrong. Progressives want the policies that support that. The neoliberals, which comprises both Democrats and Republicans, are the ones who funnel the monies in the way the laws are written by the corporations themselves and then pass by. You need to look up Affleck. What is it? I forgot the name of the group that goes around all the red states and pass these laws that get passed in Trump. It's not the left.
I
It's
know
the
who you're talking about. Yeah, no.
neoliberals. What's that?
Yeah. I
You know
know
what
who
I'm
you're
talking about?
talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
They make these laws and it's then written for the states and the federal government alike. What I'm trying to tell you is this, CSAC.
The
And
problem is that group does not. They go against the Farm Bill, which is where all these corporate subsidies come from.
no, they go with the
Okay,
farm. They
it
go
comes
with the
from the
port.
leftists who
They go
really
with the
do.
farm bills. I
The
have
problem here. Let me correct you. Okay,
yes.
I know because I deal with these programs day in and day out all the freaking time. The problem is, okay, the FDR Farm Bill. It has to be put through all the time. Okay, redone all the time. Okay, all the conservatives there in the government want to do away with it. They want to do away with all the subsidies. Okay, they want to go to the same system that New Zealand now has, which is a non-subsidy, straight across the board, open economy. Okay, free market economy, and they're doing extremely well now as far as their farm economy.
Let me.
Okay,
I gotta go
so if
now,
anyone wants
Michael.
to know New Zealand, look it
I
up.
want, yeah, and do what Michael just said. Look it up because he's not going to tell you the full story about New Zealand, but look it up. It makes sense to go ahead and look that up. But anyway,
Yeah,
let me just tell you,
yeah.
Mike. Mike,
No
let me
more
just say this,
subsidies.
okay? Let me
No
just
nothing.
tell you this, Michael. Let me just tell you this. Until you stop, and I mean this respectfully, until you stop being ideological and start being factual, you will continue to get snowed by the people you think are actually supporting you. The people that are supporting you are folks like me, not the other side. I am supporting what's best for you, not the other side that you think with the crap that they say. But we'll talk another time. Thank you for calling.
And
You're
you know,
integral. We'll talk another
that
time. We'll talk another time.
yeah,
We'll
and
talk another
that
time.
ideal is really crappy because
I know that's what you
basically
think. Again, Mike,
it is because you
Mike,
think
I
you know
watch
better than
Michael.
me.
I listen to what you say,
You
and
never listen to me.
based on what you say,
You
it's
just
not
proved it.
very it's not coherent. But we'll talk another time. Thank you, brother. You have a great day. Thank you. I appreciate your call. I really do. All right, folks, we need to go ahead and continue. Look, Mike Cisak is a good guy. Eric Hayes, good guys, but these guys have been tunnel visioned into an ideology that is not neither comprehensive nor does it make much sense to be able to effect reality. And it's hard to get through that ideological block, but the idea is there are many folks who are listening here who can actually see the reality. It's that simple. This is not difficult at all. No, I don't need to have farmed. I don't need to have farmed to know what the government programs are. I don't. And when I need information, I get from the experts, like the guy I brought onto the show. It's that simple. But anyway, folks, I got to get out of here. I got to go ahead and prepare my laptop, which blew up over the weekend, and send it in for repairs. But I have to try to erase the data to make sure that nobody's going to steal my stuff before I send it in. So I got to close down a little bit early. I want to ask you all to please support the program. And how can you support the program? Please go to politicsdoneright.com/support. That is the main link to support our program, politicsdoneright.com/support. And you can, we need people to go ahead and become paid subscribers of our newsletter. That help us tell the truth, including we try to educate however best we can. We bring people who know the material. So please go ahead and support us by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter and becoming paid subscribers of our newsletter. That will help us tell the truth and put the message out there. And again, we try to be as civil as possible with everybody. We don't intend everybody to agree with us, but the one thing is that we can all coexist. As you can see, Mike Cisak is a mainstay here. He's always here. Love the guy. We can't agree, but eventually I know that we'll come to some good spot where he sees the light. Anyway, I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willis. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.